The Curious World of Bacteria by Ludger Wess. Ludger Wess holds a degree in biology and chemistry and a PhD in like social studies of science. Began his career as a researcher of molecular biology and then later becoming a science and technology editor. He has written like numerous articles on science and biotechnology, and he aims to contribute a better understanding of science and technology and to improve the public understanding of science. And lastly, to mention about him is that he is a member of the National Association of Science Writers. This book was originally written in German, published in 2020, and then later translated into English, which is the version I have here. Now, when I was younger, I did not know much about bacteria and thought of it as only something bad or something invisible that you didn't want on your body. As I got older, a lot of science courses throughout high school and college, I started to hear a lot more about bacteria and their importance. During those times, I felt like I still didn't fully understand bacteria, even though I had class material on it. Couldn't quite comprehend at the time, but I knew then that this is something that I need to know more about. And later down in life, that I'm going to need to look this up. Now, usually, if I'm trying to learn about a subject or a material, my go-to is trying to find like YouTube lectures about it, about that particular subject, and listen and write about it. I found like that's like the best way for me to learn. Now, I don't even know how I originally came across this book, but I do remember reading the reviews about it and reading comments saying how well organized this book was written. After reading this book, I definitely developed a solid understanding of bacteria and the different types of bacteria, their functions, their physical forms, how they use oxygen or sunlight, their energy source, and their environment they thrive in, and many more, of course. And let's be honest, bacteria is everywhere, so it might be best to know what it is. Now, this book is divided into two parts. Part one, the introduction of bacteria, begins with like defining what bacteria are. Like the single cell organisms that exist in nearly every environment on Earth. Part one introduces an overview, including how they reproduce, as well as like the different shapes and sizes, their functions. And after understanding these basic characteristics, a natural question may arise: where do bacteria come from? And he states in the book that bacteria possibly originated at least 3.8 billion years ago on the ocean floor near these hydrothermal vents. To this day, the majority of all bacteria on the planet live in the sea or beneath the seabed. And he explains that bacteria would spread over time, living in all these types of environment, being found in rocks on top of like the Himalayan mountains to the desert surface in Sudan. And as of course, they live on in with us, guarding our skin, helping our gut, assisting in our immune system as well. And this is pretty much what the Vest explains in this book. Now, part one, you learn about like the incredible diversity and the shapes of bacteria. Compared to all these other living organisms on Earth, bacteria displays a far greater variation with these unique different types, different shapes and sizes. They may exist as like a single or independent cell or grouped together to form like colonies. Additionally, bacteria are capable of interacting in complex ways. They can communicate with one another, work together, and even exchange genetic material. Very, very informational. Vest dives into like discovery of bacteria. In the book, he writes that Antoine van Leeuwenhoek, if I'm mispronouncing that, a Dutch cloth merchant and a scientist, may have been the first person to see bacteria. I believe it was during the 17th century. He explains that during Antoine's life, he made several hundred microscopes with magnification up to 270 times in perfect resolution. That was far better than any other instrument at the time. He revealed that the invisible world of bacteria. Fast forward to the 19th century, where air in towns and cities were contaminated by decaying garbage, slaughterhouses, and these underground cesspools, the unhealthy workshops environments. During this timeline is where we see a lot more researchers and scientists experiment with bacteria, and later proving that these microorganisms can cause diseases with that. They also recognized that they were neither animals nor plants, but their own distinct realm of life, which they now call a domain. With the 19th century being the golden age of bacteriology, he explains. Now, part one is he talks about bacteria being studied leading up to the 21st century now, with microscopes still being the most important instrument remaining. Then he briefly goes into like the evolution of bacteria and archaea and eukaryotes and how the scientists found a close relationship with the three, with bacteria possibly being the first. Possibly coming from that one universal ancestor, which the biologists term Luca. Now, near the end of part one, there is a section called Bacteria in Distant Worlds where he outlines 5 ideas on how bacteria can survive in these distant worlds. Fascinating section to end off part one. Had me thinking about that litho panspermia theory. Now, in part two, Ludger Wess organized bacteria into different groups, each presented as its own chapter. These categories include the record holders, extremists, occupiers of technological habitats, exotic eaters, helpful bacteria, and dangerous bacteria. Um, all of it builds on the foundation from part one. If we go into occupiers of technological habitats in this chapter, are types of bacteria that have adapted to survive in places created by technology. A bacterium that can live and adapt in human-made environment. One of those is called Deinococcus radiodurans. I definitely mispronouncing it. It was discovered during the time where humans used radioactive and the use of mini nuclear reactors that led to early deaths for many people that was working in those types of fields. Tests were made to see if this bacterium can survive enormous radiation levels, which it did. Thus, they gave it the nickname the radiation surviving ball of terror, I believe it was. This bacterium can protect and repair itself, sophisticated mechanism with scientists having expectation if this bacterium may have possibly originated from Mars through like bombardment. Really interesting, and today it's used in trials to treat radioactive waste. If we look into the dangerous bacteria chapter, there is a bacterium called Yersinia pestis. This bacterium caused the largest known bacterial pandemic in the history of humanity, the Black. Also known as the Black Death, caused the death of about 30 to 50% of the population of Europe. Named after Swiss physician Alexandre Yersin, who discovered it while analyzing swollen glands of victims in the 1894 epidemic that hit Hong Kong. It usually affects rats and rodents being transmitted by fleas, but once these rat colonies are affected with these bacterium, more and more rats will die. Once these rat colonies significant reduced, then they start these infected fleas will start biting humans. And once it bites the humans, then once bacterium gets into their bloodstream, symptoms may include headache, body aches, fever, neurological disorder, with death occurring from the lung or heart failure. When there's abundance of this, though, this bacterium in the human body, the bacterium will move only faster, potentially causing like a septic shock, organ failure, and or blood clotting. The skin turns a dark purple, which is how they got the term Black Death to name this disease. This book also explains that that type of bacterium was used as like a biological weapon. During the World War II, the Japanese troops dropped a large number of these infected ridden fleas out of the planes over, I believe it was Manchuria, during their invasion. And I believe also the Soviet Union used it as well during the 1980s, he mentions in the book. This bacterium is still present today, predominantly in African countries and some parts in Asia. Interesting to know that it can be deactivated by sunlight. Final thoughts about this book. This book makes complex scientific language more simple and easy to understand for general readers. I honestly thought I was going to need to do a lot of like looking up words and definition, but this book was really well written, I would say. Had some good analogies when explaining examples, especially when it comes to the title of the chapters in part two. It's like you know what to expect. What I like most was like the structure of the book and how it was organized, making it easy to follow. Starting with like the introduction of the bacteria, getting the background of it in part one, then moving into the detailed bacterium profiles in part two. Now I'm glad that they were able to translate this book into English. This allows like scientific knowledge to extend beyond that one language and reach like a wider global audience overall, helping people understand science of bacteria overall too. Let me know in the comments below if you have read this book and what you enjoyed about it, or if you plan on reading it. If you enjoyed this review, hit the like button to help out the channel, and to see more content from me, hit the subscribe. Till next time.